All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Birdability Outreach Program webinar. This is the next in our series of accessible acts of science. And we are so excited to have you here today. My name is Kat Fribley. I am the executive director here at Birdability. I am a middle aged, fat white woman wearing sparkly red glasses and multicolored, but mostly gray in the front, hair up in two buns. Behind me are some green plants and a red wall. We hope that you will have what you need in terms of accessibility for this event. And for that, I wanted to let you know that you can certainly enable captions down below by hitting closed captions, or I just put a link in the chat. That link is to a live stream of our live captioner, Joyce, who is here with us today, who is doing captions in such a way that you can have the whole transcript up instead of the captions at the bottom. Please participate in whatever way is most accessible to you. Birdability, as you all know, is an organization. We're a nonprofit working to make the outdoors and birding more accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities and other health concerns. And as a part of that work, our Birdability Outreach Program hosts a webinar about every other month. This year, we've been focused on community science. And so we started off talking about Project Feeder Watch back in January. In March, we talked about SciStarter and Citizen Science Month, which happened in April. And you all helped us contribute to 2.5 million acts of science during April. And now we're really excited in June to have the opportunity to hear from Ben Haywood and Hannah Partridge. They are both with National Audubon and are folks that I have been working with as we have a partnership around creating more accessible Christmas and winter bird counts. I also want to introduce just very briefly, although they're not on screen right now, Clow and Cassandra Dean. They are two of our Birdability captains who have been doing just really amazing work in terms of creating and facilitating accessible or partly accessible CBCs in their own communities. So Ben and Hannah, I'm really thrilled that you all are here today and joining us. I hope that you will introduce yourselves and take it away. And then, as you all wrap up, just to give everybody a sense, then we'll move it into a panel discussion where Eric, Cassandra, and I will be back. So, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Ben and Hannah, thank you so much for being here and for all the work that you're doing around accessible CBCs.
Thank you so much, Kat. It's really an honor to be here. We appreciate you inviting us, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really pleased to be here and to be able to share a little bit more about the partnership and the work that we're kind of creating together in this community. So I'm Ben Haywood. I'm the Director of Community Science at National Audubon Society, and I'm joined by my colleague, Hannah. Hannah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ben. I'm Hannah Partridge. I'm so excited to be here. I am the Community Action Manager with National Audubon.
All right, so I'm going to share a few slides here and just walk you through a few things before we move to, I'm sure, what's going to be the more interesting part, which is our opportunity to have a conversation. But for those of you that are new or maybe new to the Christmas bird count, I just wanted to kind of start with a brief overview of what it is before we dive into the storied history of the count and talk more about our efforts to create a more inclusive community in the CBC. So the Christmas bird count, or the CBC as we often use, is one of the longest running community science projects in the world. It's now in its 127th year, so that's a pretty big milestone. And each year, tens of thousands of volunteers across the Americas count birds as part of this program. They do this on count dates that occur between December 14th and January 5th. So this isn't just, though, about the data. The science from this program is really incredibly important. It's certainly about community. It's certainly about connection to nature, and the simple joy of engaging with birds and other bird enthusiasts. Whether you're an experienced birder or someone who just enjoys listening or watching birds at your feeder, we want there to be a place for you in the Christmas bird count. And so I thought I would just dive into a little bit of history of the Christmas bird count itself. So just to start back when the CBC started at the turn of the 20th century, to help kind of put us into the mindset of that time period, I've pulled up a recolorized photo of the market in New York City during this time. And the image on the screen is really of one where there's crowded street of people dressed in these nice dresses and suits and street cars filled with goods to sell, rows of city buildings in the background. This is the time that we're talking about. The automobile had just been invented, but really wasn't in widespread use at all at this point, not until the 1920s. Also during this time, the conservation movement really took flight. So by 1900, the belief that our wildlife and natural resources was inexhaustible was displayed in the fashion of the day, and that was hats that contained bird feathers were very, very popular, as many of you, I'm sure, know. Frank Chapman, who was an ornithologist with the American Museum of Natural History and the publisher of what was known as Bird Lore magazine, he wrote about how he went on a walk in Manhattan one day and he counted 542 people wearing hats that were adorned with entire birds or a part of their plumage in some way, representing 42 different species. He's actually kept a tally of this. And this is, there's an image on the screen now that depicts this trend with a person that's dressed fashionably with this very large black hat adorned with a sizable white bird wing, right? And so unregulated hunting of birds for their feathers resulted in really big population losses, especially for water birds, and around 60 bird species faced extinction during this period of time. So it was within that context where people were starting to become concerned about how humans could impact birds and the ecosystems that they rely on. And that the idea for the Christmas bird count really emerged in this environment. So Frank Chapman, through that Bird Lore magazine that he edited, proposed an alternative to what was then known as the Christmas side hunt. This is where teams of hunters would go out around Christmas time to shoot as many birds as possible to compete against one another in these different hunting teams. And he suggested that, instead, people might actually go out and count birds and then send their findings in to be published in his magazine, Bird Lore. He thought the findings would be of interest to other participants and would also, constitute this like census of bird life that we could do on an annual basis. And so on the screen is an image of the front cover of the Bird Lore magazine and a copy of the article that Chapman wrote for that magazine titled A Christmas Bird Census. And this was really the first CBC that happened many, many years ago. There's also a black and white photo of Chapman himself on the screen. He's dressed in this really nice suit jacket, and he's got a mustache, which was common during that time, and a bow tie that, again, kind of fit the fashion of the day. Now, you might be wondering about the name. So why is it called the Christmas bird count? Well, as noted, this really comes from that historical context. It was, built as an alternative to those Christmas side hunts. But here's what's important to know about the CBC. The count doesn't just happen on Christmas Day. As a matter of fact, most counts don't. And you absolutely don't need to celebrate Christmas to participate. In fact, the count takes place over a 3-week period, as I mentioned, and each count circle chooses the one day during that period in which they want to hold their count. So the name really simply reflects that holiday season timing around the historical kind of roots of the count. But we're over 100 years later now, and this is a community science project that is open to everyone, regardless of what holiday you celebrate. It's about birds, it's about community and conservation, and there's really a place for everyone who wants to be a part. So I just wanted to consider the CBC over the years. On this screen is a graph that shows growth in CBC circles by country or region over the first 120 years of the program. So the x-axis, which is the horizontal line, is really of years. It runs from year 1900 to 2020, and the y-axis, which is the vertical, is the number of count circles, ranging from 0 to about 2,500. And the graph is showing growth from just a handful of circles in that first year to 2,500 circles by the year 2020. And actually, I'll note in just a moment that we actually exceeded 2,700 circles this last count. So we're continuing to grow. And this is a great time to really take a moment to really celebrate the expansive community that supported the Christmas bird count throughout the Americas. You can see on the graph that in the 1970s, we started to add circles in Latin America and the Caribbean. Our circles in Canada began to grow. And so, today, more than half of all new circles actually are started outside of the US and Canada. So we're continuing to expand. And so I'll turn it over to Hannah.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So that brings us up to the CBC today. So our most recent count was the 126th year of this tradition with such interesting beginnings. On the screen here, you'll see this map of the Western Hemisphere, and you'll see these small blue dots begin appearing all along the eastern seaboard of the United States, and they gradually kind of spread across the United States, across Canada, and beyond. So, as Ben just shared, over time, the CBC has really grown into thousands of counts. I mean, over 2,700 circles, right? As Ben just shared, and involving tens of thousands of participants across the Western Hemisphere. And the data collected, I mean, they're publicly accessible online, and they've become a really important resource for scientists, policymakers, everybody. I personally have used that data before I joined Audubon, so I can attest to its use and value. But what makes the CBC truly special is that it's about more than data collection. So it's also just this big community tradition. It brings people together of all backgrounds, of all experience levels, of all abilities in support of bird conservation. So it's a really valuable, long-standing community tradition. You can go next slide. Perfect, thank you. And as one of the longest running crowdsourced bird surveys in the world, the Christmas bird count is a really rich source of information for decisions about how to protect birds, how to protect the habitats they need to survive. And the CBC, it's not just about counting birds, not just about going out on a bird outing, but it's also about checking the larger pulse of the ecosystem, seeing how everything is actually going. And it powers conservation science throughout the hemisphere. So on the screen here, you see examples of reports that have used CBC data. So that includes things like state wildlife action plans. I think that one's from Colorado, all the way up to the most recent United States State of the Birds report. Next slide. Okay. And one really powerful sorry about that. Here on this slide, we just have a little bit of information. Let's see, do you want to talk about this okay, this is
Yeah.
back to you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I'm
Back
happy
to
to
Ben.
jump in. No problem. So at a very basic level, here's kind of how the CBC works. I saw a question in the chat about what is a circle. So each Christmas bird count takes place within a specific 15-mile, 24-kilometer circle. These circles have been established in communities across the Americas, and once a circle is established, it pretty much stays in the same location year after year. That consistency is really critical for tracking changes over time. Each circle sets a designated count day, which falls somewhere between, again, December 14th and January 5th. And on that day, volunteers count every single bird that they see or hear within that circle from midnight to 11:59 p.m., or as much of the time that they can cover, right? You don't have to be out there the whole time. Volunteers certainly can contribute for as much as they'd like, a couple of hours, a half an hour here and there. We have some volunteers that spend all day out looking for birds. A local leader called a compiler organizes the count and works with other circle leaders to coordinate volunteers to cover areas and times. And some people might bird for a couple of hours, others all day. Some focus on daytime birding, others go owling at night to make sure you're catching those nocturnal species. The key is that we're all working together to get, as complete a picture as possible of the birds in that circle on that one day out of the year. It's also worthwhile just to note that there are three main kind of types of participation. So the first is field counting. This is individuals or counting parties, groups that are surveying different areas of that 15-mile circle during daytime hours. So field counts can be done, while moving. You could be on foot, you could be in a wheelchair, you could be in skis. We have people on bicycles and golf carts, dog sleds, horseback sometimes. We cover the gamut, or from a stationary spot that isn't a feeder, right? So such as a park overlook or a nature center. And a lot of times groups that do big sits will participate in that way in the field counting, area. As I mentioned, we also have nocturnal counts. So some individuals or groups survey areas of the circle during nighttime hours to record nocturnal species. Again, these could be moving or they could be stationary counts. This is a kind of great opportunity for those night owls out there to get some of those nocturnal species. And then finally, feeder counting. So individuals or groups can count birds at stationary feeders within that circle, so within the 15 miles, often in their own backyards or in a local kind of community garden. These counts follow CBC feeder watching guidelines, and they focus on birds that visit those feeders or the nearby area. So just to note that, it's our belief at Audubon that protecting and conserving nature transcends political, cultural, social boundaries. And we believe that respect, inclusion, and opportunity for people of all backgrounds, lifestyles, perspectives, and abilities will attract the best ideas and harness the greatest passion to shape a healthier, more vibrant future for all of us who share our planet. We welcome everyone who finds delight in birds and nature, and participation in the Christmas bird count brings us together as a caring community of people who are inspired by birds and want to protect them. That said, we recognize that the CBC has not always been accessible and open to all, and we acknowledge that there is much work to do to enhance this accessibility in many forms across the CBC network, and that's really why we are so excited about the partnership that we have with Birdability. So we have a vision of an updated, more modernized, more dynamic CBC for the future. And so over the next several years, we're working to really transform this flagship program to enhance the experience for participants while welcoming new communities across the Americas. And that will involve updates to all aspects of the program, from how people learn about enjoying the CBC to the technology that we use, and even how we share and use the data that's collected. And so as we build towards that future, you may notice gradual enhancements and new features that we're testing. But one aspect of that transformation involves our work to really increase accessibility of the counts themselves. So Hannah will share a little bit more now about our ideal partnership.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Back on track. It looks like I was looking at some hidden slides. So I got a little off track. Okay, so one of the ways that we've been doing all that really important work is through a partnership with the IDEAL program. So IDEAL stands for Inclusive, Diverse, Equitable, and Accessible Large-Scale Participatory Science Projects. That's a lot of words. It was developed by an NSF, National Science Foundation, funded working group that was led by a variety of participatory science leaders, with the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network is currently serving as the sponsor. And the program is led by Dr. Karen Cooper at North Carolina State University. But the core goal of IDEAL is really simple. It's to broaden engagement in participatory science projects, such as the Christmas bird count. So Audubon has partnered with IDEAL to strengthen engagement in the Christmas bird count with a very specific goal. We want everyone who wants to learn about and care about birds to be welcomed in their habitats. We want them to all feel a sense of belonging, of purpose, of community. And so this partnership is making sure that everyone has a place in bird conservation. And as I said, so the National Science Foundation provided that initial grant to pilot IDEAL, specifically with Audubon. And we're really excited now to say that we have two cohorts of Audubon staff and chapter leaders that have already participated in and completed the program. So why does IDEAL matter? And especially, why does it matter for the CBC? So we see three major benefits of broader participation. First, it strengthens the science. So when we have broader participation, we gather more data, We gather more data from more places, more communities. It gives us a bigger, better, full picture of bird populations. Second, it works to expand community engagement. So we have, when more people from all sorts of backgrounds feel welcome, our reach and our impact grows. And then third, it improves conservation outcomes. So we have better science, we have broader engagement, and that helps us lead to more effective conservation work. So ideal at Audubon is really designed for any CBC leader, whether you're a compiler, a leader from a chapter, a center, a sanctuary, one of the new community engagement leaders, or simply a dedicated Christmas bird count supporter. You are absolutely welcome. Um, and all of this matters because the information collected through this Audubon bird or Christmas bird count is part of that effort to bend the bird curve. If you've been to Audubon events, you've probably heard that term. And that just means we're trying to reverse the species declines that we're seeing. So this is really important work and we need all the help that we can get. So broader inclusion, representation, these are not just values that we aspire to, they actually are actively helping us meet our conservation goals. Okay. And let's see, Ben, I think passing it back to you here to talk about opportunities.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Thanks for sharing more about that program. So, we do offer three pathways for leaders, as Hannah was mentioning, to engage in this program. One of those is through foundational guidance. So we do provide resources to all of our leaders that want to access that. And we also have these concentrated connection sessions that we offer 4 times a year to really talk about specific aspects of inclusivity. And then the last one is a year-long community of practice in which, individuals build local partnerships, expand their engagement to increase inclusion in their local areas. So we're really trying to provide opportunities that meet various needs and people where they are. We've already seen a number of valuable outcomes. Just a couple more slides here and we'll wrap up. I mean, as you can see on the screen, we've heard from a lot of our participants in this program that it's helping them increase their awareness of systemic biases, that it's providing structured approaches to build inclusive practices, supporting participants in developing their nuanced understanding of inclusivity, what that looks like in conservation work. It's encouraging more long-term relationship building with different communities instead of one-off kind of interactions, supported structural changes such as establishing an advisory council for the local CBC circle, and really recognizing that value of listening to and creating welcoming spaces for all members of the community. As an offshoot of that program, Hannah's going to share a little bit more about the partnership with Birdability.
Yes, sorry, the unmute button gets lost. Thanks, Ben. So yeah, we're really excited to be partnering with Cat and Birdability to create this new toolkit for CBC leaders that builds a lot of variety. Well, there are already a lot of excellent resources developed, but it's building on those and making them more accessible for everyone, including all of the Audubon network as well. So, as many of you probably already know, Birdability already offers a web page that's dedicated to making Christmas bird counts more accessible. And on the screen here, you'll see an image of that tool, including a map with little blue icons marking accessible birding locations. So this new co-developed accessibility toolkit for CBC leaders will include a bunch of things. One, case studies. So these will be stories from local Christmas bird count leaders who are already putting more accessible practices into action, and they give us a lot to learn. Two, we'll have site accessibility guidance. So these are tools to evaluate and describe accessibility features at Christmas bird count locations. That includes things like parking, trail surfaces, restrooms, that sort of information. Three, we will have event description templates. So these will be, easy to use language for sharing really clear, inclusive event details with participants. And then we will have also inclusive language guidance. So we'll have some tips for using welcoming, respectful language in all Christmas bird count communications. And then finally, we'll have social safety strategies. So these are approaches that just support the psychological well-being of participants and help create welcoming spaces for everyone. And then finally, we'll also have multilingual expansion. So in future phases, we have plans to include materials in Spanish and French. So just a quick example of event description. This is one example of a CBC sector description before any changes are made, so we know that there's room to improve how a lot of CBC events are described. On the screen here, you see this typical example of this count description within a circle. So it says, meet at San Juan Turnpike Trailhead, A, at 6 a.m. to cover Sector C for the early morning option. Rugged terrain, must keep up with the group. Please call Mark at this phone number to join the group. So there are some really clear issues with this one. Um, so then looking at some changes, here we have just a few changes. Now it says, greet the sunrise at Sector C your way. Prefer a gentle roadside vantage or staying in your vehicle? Great. Want a short scenic trail section at your own pace? Also great. We'll form 2 subgroups so everyone can enjoy the morning birds comfortably. Join either group for any portion. So this is already a really great improvement, but the description doesn't stop there. So we can continue expanding that to include information here on, there's this early morning option. This has cooler temperatures. It has sunrise views. The surfaces, it might be a half a mile compacted dirt path with occasional roots. There's one little 3-inch lip at a footbridge. It's uneven at spots. It includes information here on the grade, on subgroups. So do you want to join the trail team? Do you want to join the roadside or the vehicle team? If you want to do that, you will just bird from a wide gravel shoulder or your vehicle. There are folding stools available. It includes information on the facilities, expectations. You can join any portion. You don't have to stay for the full, uh, you know, 4 to 8 hours that it feels like. And then there are also alternatives. So you can join the home feeder counts within any area of Sector C. And if you want to join, you can contact Mark at this email or this phone number and send any questions. So this is just one example of ways that we're going to be hoping to make progress here. So we really look forward to working with Birdability on this and partner with Christmas bird count leaders across the entire hemisphere to grow our flock. And yeah, with that, I'll pass it back to Ben and Kat. I think we're moving into the panel.
Yes, we are. And Hannah, I'm so grateful that you and Ben were able to share some of the work that's already happening, right? To make Christmas bird counts more accessible and more inclusive, lots of different ways to anyone who's historically been excluded from uh, community based science, from bird outings, from traditional ways of participating in community science. And so we are really grateful for the ongoing partnership and the work that's still to come. We just finished up some amazing focus groups with a number of folks who have amazing ideas, including the 2 folks who are joining us, who are Birdability Captains today. I'm going to start with you, Cassandra, and I'm going to ask if you will introduce yourself, tell us where you are, and then I have a question for you about the fact that you did an accessible and family counting station as a part of the Christmas bird count in Nebraska. And so introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you learned from that experience, about how sometimes really small access changes make a really big difference in who can participate.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Cassandra Dean. I'm white, female, have glasses, wearing a gray sweater. I am, my hair is head up, wet red hair, for those. I am the captain in Nebraska. Yeah, so I did that. So one thing I learned about accessibility and making sure it's available for family is to include kids.
Mm.
Um, the first 2 years that I started CBC, I always was getting like adults because at the time most kids don't want to get up at on a Saturday morning and count birds. Um, and so the first so the our first family one it was okay. I mean, I we had a little kid there and it was fine and he enjoyed it and wanted to do more of it, and I think they're going to come back next year, or I should say this year, for it. But it was a good step in the right direction, I felt like. And
Mhm.
so that's what we were trying to do is promote more family oriented for those with kids that have accessibility. So one of the things was putting it at a later time rather than early
Mhm.
in the morning. Maybe like so it was like at 10:30, I believe was the start
Mhm.
time. So it wasn't so cold because
Yeah.
I have fibromyalgia, so I'm in pain all the time. So when it gets really cold, you can feel it in your
Yeah.
bones. And so I was trying to put it at a later time. I think we might move it to afternoon this time, but we don't know yet. But that is something we've been trying to work on is try to get more of the kids involved.
Mhm.
So the thought was putting it closer to schools too. Um, and so that the school systems can actually participate as well. So there's still some things to improve this year, but I think we're heading into the right direction.
I love that. And I know, Cassandra, that some of what you did also was there were warming stations, right? There were places people could get warm, and there were
Hmm.
ways that people could participate that were really like those little changes, moving it later, putting it someplace that was accessible in the way that people could stay warm. You're in Nebraska, I'm in Iowa. We know December and January
Yes,
stationary bird counts are cold. And so
yes,
finding ways to create that kind of accessibility that is about certainly people with disabilities and other health concerns, but also that invites in new conservationists, right?
right,
People who
exactly.
are
Yeah,
kids
a
who are
young,
learning.
yeah, these young kids that want to grow up and become ornithologists, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so great. Well, we're going to come back to you for some other
Okay.
kinds of questions. Eric, I want to come to you now and ask you if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then you wrote a birdability blog for us about
Mhm.
accessible or partly accessible Christmas bird counts. And I remember you talking about it feeling kind of intimidating at first, right? And then
Mhm.
that once you connected with those existing CBC organizers, things felt easier. Can you share a little bit more about yourself and about that experience?
Sure. So I'm a late 30s bearded white man with short hair. Now I'm in my preppy phase. I've got a green shirt on. I'm in the garage where I've got some gray soundproofing panels behind me, and I've got a bunch of head switches around my headrest that allow me to switch positions in my wheelchair. So. I am a birdability captain. I think I kind of got involved with birdability going back to 2021, and I've been uh, leading an accessible component of the Round Rock Christmas bird count down here near Austin, Texas. For I think we've done it for 4 years now. So yeah, I mean, at first I didn't know anything really about the CBCs, like, and I feel like uh that basically how we were able to get our part started was Virginia Rose, the founder of Birdability, was friends with a gentleman named Michael Behrens who runs the Area 6 sector of the Round Rock CBC. And one of our favorite, most very accessible birding locations happened to be squarely in that sector. And so basically how we were able to kind of add this accessible component is um, we met at Lake Creek Trail at the trailhead, and the person who would usually cover that area of the trail, they just started maybe 100 feet down the trail so that we weren't, you know, getting redundancies in our species counts. And and once we did that, it's like we had the perfect location. We did a stationary style bird count, so all kind of hanging out in the trailhead or in the adjacent parking lot, counting species. And yeah, it was just a very accessible location, very flat, very even surfaces. There's a disabled parking space. There aren't any curb cuts to worry about, that sort of thing. And also pretty quiet, which is great because that means that folks who are, blind or vision impaired who are listening or birding by ear
it's very conducive to that. And um, oh, gosh, what was I going to say? We meet at 8 a.m. So, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., but it is kind of a, join when you can.
Hmm.
And oh, this is what I was going to say. In Austin, we don't have to worry that much about the cold, thankfully. So most of our bird counts are, it's maybe 50 degrees when we arrive and sunshine. So
Lucky.
I guess that's another way that it's a little bit accessible, but we always like people are welcome to bring whatever they need to be comfortable. So if that means an electric vest or, heated socks or whatever, you're welcome to do what you need to do to be comfortable.
I love that.
So yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately what I want to say is that it's a lot easier than you think to make ACBC accessible. You could, reach out and, to people in your area saying, do you have bird feeders? Are you in the count circle? Just sit and hang out and count birds at your feeder. If there's an accessible park, just arrange a stationary big sit. It's really very simple, and not too difficult. You just have to want to do it.
Hmm. We have a question in the chat that I think like fits right in here. Nick asks, is there any emphasis on adjusting specific locations of the counts to more accessible alternatives and or partnering with local groups or municipalities to actually target existing count locations for accessible infrastructure improvements? And I have to say, Nick, I like the way you think. That second part is not something I had done a lot of thinking about. And now that's sort
Mhm.
of really swirling in my head about building accessible improvements. I'm wondering, any of you, Ben, Hannah, Eric, or Cassandra, talking about that adjusting specific locations to more accessible alternatives is something that I know has been coming up a lot, right? There are the accessible pathways, meaning different ways people can participate: stationary, car birding, feeder watching, along with those nocturnal counts and the other sort of field events. But I'm curious about whether there has been a movement to try to find accessible locations to replace some of the less accessible, or at least add to them. Because within a circle count, I'm if I'm remembering correctly, there's no limit to how many different counts, right, can be going on within that 15-mile circle. So adding events is no trouble. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, absolutely, Kat, you're right. And I love this suggestion, Nick. We know that in a lot of our circles, there are areas that aren't surveyed, right? And so I think that's a wonderful idea to think about, especially using the resources like the map that Birdability provides, right? Where are the more accessible locations that could be, made more active in this space? And could we really think about in that space, right, advertising that as an opportunity, right, to build community and think about things in a different way. It's also true that anyone can start a new circle. So as long as there's not overlap with an existing circle, if there is a more accessible area, we invite opportunities to think about adding that new circle there as well. So I think both of those ideas, and the third one, which is partnering with local, leaders to really make existing circle areas more accessible. I love that idea, and I think that's a opportunity for local leaders to really, step up and take some ownership of that too.
Mhm. I one of the things that I like, you just said something about building community, Ben, and I think when people think about the Christmas bird count, they automatically go to the science piece of it, right? This is about conservation by learning, by counting, and by really uplifting that data, the science of it. But the CBCs are really also about community building, and
Mhm.
conservation relies on more and more of us to care deeply about birds and their habitats and the things that allow them to thrive. And so, Eric and Cassandra, you two in particular have helped create spaces both for the CBCs and also just in your work as captains who do accessible birdability outings quite regularly. You've created these spaces where birders, both with and without disabilities, bird together, often across generations and across experience levels, across racial and ethnic group. We really are talking about such an incredible sort of community building that happens. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the way accessible CBCs build community and how that links back to some of what Ben and Hannah were talking about before.
Oh, can I comment on
Yeah.
that? The question? Okay, so I want to start off by saying my very first CBC was not at a very accessible place. And so it actually was quite difficult to do the first year that I had it. And we partner, if you don't know, Lincoln, Nebraska is huge. So there's lots of parks that are involved in the CBC count. And so the second year we talked to the Lincoln City Park system to see which would be another location rather than this other one for me to have this event. And we chose this other location called Oak Lake. And I thought, okay, it could work. And then so the next year we tried it out, and then as I was trying it out, there was some things that were just hindering it. First of all, no restrooms were open because, this park, they have to shut down the pipes because of the winter season and everything. And so that obviously didn't make it as accessible either. So you go back to the third time drawing board, and that's where you meet up with to propose this other site, which was what it was used last year, which was Pioneers Park, which had the both indoor and outdoor facility space. So communication as to what you need is probably going to be the key thing to these organizations that you're partnering with. And just telling them this is not working. I mean, you can try it, see if it works. If it's not, then go back and say, hey, do you have something else? And bring a list of items to make sure. So like this new site, I have bathrooms, and that's because it's accessible, right? Because people come and they are going to sit for 2 or 3 hours, and then why do they want to sit 2 to 3 hours at a place that has no restrooms?
Right.
And so I think always trying to figure out what locations are in or around your area that would be accessible, and go talk to them personally about how to put a CBC in those areas. And so
I love that. And that's what allows then that community to be built, right? You don't bring
Right.
a toddler that you just fed breakfast to an event where there's no bathroom,
Right.
or yourself, right? As a myself, certainly as a person who needs to have a bathroom accessible more frequently, perhaps than other folks. So I love if you build it, the community comes.
Yes.
Eric, what about you? Talk a little bit about how you've noticed accessible CBCs building community.
Well, I think, I'm just a huge fan of stationary birding. And I think it's not only because it suits my physical limitations a lot better than moving birding does, but you notice things that you might miss if you're constantly on the move. And when you're kind of just quietly being in space, birds will sometimes feel a little bit more more safe, and come closer and appear and make their sounds. And but another reason why stationary birding is so great is because you really have a chance to kind of spend time with anywhere from maybe 3 to a dozen people, and in that, side conversations form, friendships and connections form. One of our traditions with our CBC count is one of our more seasoned volunteers brings in a mess of breakfast tacos to share with the group. So that's all that, I mean, food that helps connect people and lift spirits and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just I'm a real big advocate of the stationary birding also because it allows more space for more people. Going down a trail, you might just be with 1 or 2 people, but this is actually a community building event. If you don't mind, I'd like to also answer what part of Nick's question, which is that, I think, well, first off, I want to say the Birdability map is a huge resource. So if you don't know if there's an accessible location in your bird count, that's probably your first stop. Secondly, we don't have to think about birding, we might want to expand beyond the idea of we're birding on trails and wilderness areas and, nature centers. I mean, if there's a parking lot in your in your CBC circle, which I'm guessing that you do have a parking lot, well, there you go. That's an accessible birding site. If there's a house with a driveway or a backyard, you can bird there. It's really birds are everywhere, so you can bird wherever works for you, you know. And I just like I'm of the mind of let's add, not subtract or replace, because the more data we collect, the more valuable this you know citizen science initiative is. So
And the more people who are involved, the more people care deeply about this community and the birds, both. And
absolutely.
I think that is such a crucial part of it. One of the things that you were just talking about is, I think, such an important piece, Eric, that, Birdability's guidance really emphasizes that we don't think of accessible or partly accessible CBCs as quote unquote special events, right? We are thinking
Absolutely.
of them as making the mainstream more accessible overall. So for us, that has been this inclusivity, this move towards inclusivity across the board, not just right in specialized events, I think is such an important component. I'm curious if you all, any of you want to talk to why it matters that disabled birders are included in these kinds of long standing community science traditions like the CBC.
I'm happy to jump in on that one, Kat,
Yeah.
just a little bit. I mean, I think about that in a couple of different ways. I mean, one is a little bit more practical, and that just is, it has to do with the structure of these large scale programs. So, one of the things that we've emphasized in the Ideal program is that inclusion is not just about inviting more people, right, to participate. It's actually about changing the structures and the communication practices and the assumptions that we make about who feels able to participate in the first place. And so, when we do take seriously that inclusion, we ask questions like, is accessibility information available to our community? Whether there are participation options that actually work, as Cassandra was just talking about, right? Can we assume that everyone likes to hike long distances, right? No. I mean, the answer to that is no. In fact, even myself, right? And so when we ask those questions, we build accessibility into the way that we design and the way that we plan. And I think that helps us actually make those structural shifts, which are critical because they're not just these one-off and temporary kind of events. But I would say second for me and more broadly, including disabled birders in programs like the CBC, it matters because the CBC is this long-standing tradition, as you just mentioned, Kat, but also it's this really important source of critical data. And if disabled birders are not included in that tradition, then we're essentially limiting who gets to participate in conservation and who gets to, whose observations really count and whose observations matter in that data. And I think both of those are really critically important, both the practical changes, the structural shifts, but also just that broader, inclusion in terms of our work together to conserve the things that we love.
Absolutely. I love that. Anybody else have pieces? Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that second piece, just the inclusion. I mean, when we include, well, everybody has different knowledge, different perspectives, different experiences, and all of our programs are stronger when we include a greater variety of those things. So that's the piece that I keep coming back to. Yeah, the more people we bring in and make the CBC accessible for, the stronger it is. So
I
that's
love
the
that.
key piece for me.
And I just want to uplift Eric something actually, and then I'll go to you. But something that I remember hearing when you and I were talking at a focus group, and your event is a stationary event, which allows for slower, more contemplative sort of birding,
Mm.
paying attention in a different way, perhaps, than moving down a trail, as you talked about. And I know, for example, that sometimes that means we actually hear and see different birds than you would if you were canvassing that area by simply moving through it. And so I know that that was something that did happen for you all. I'm curious if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say as well. Is yeah, our first year we got a pair of Franklin's gulls, and that was a rare bird for our area. And it was I think we were the only ones that got Franklin's gull in the whole CBC circle. And really, it's because we were just sitting in that same spot for 4 hours. So when 3.5 hours rolled around, there's somebody still there to get that species. And kind of like echoing what Hannah was mentioning earlier, the more people that we have doing this work, the more data that we have, and that just, enriches the whole project. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just think the more the merrier, basically. And, there's a lot of great disabled birders out there that would love to be included in this.
I appreciate that in particular, and I'm going to move around a little bit in the questions because I think that that leads us really beautifully into what would you encourage someone to do as a first step if they want to participate in their local CBC or talk with a compiler about access options. I know a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of the work that Birdability is doing with National Audubon right now is about making sure that things are getting planned from an access standpoint. But there's also the piece around disabled birders not even really knowing if this is for them, right? Or how to get involved. And I'm curious, each of you, if there is something that you think would be a first step for someone who may want to participate and who has access needs that they bring with them as a CBC participant.
I was gonna have Cassandra answer this one, unless you want me to jump in.
Yeah, either of you, go ahead.
Well, I think that I so, at least our local Travis Audubon Society, we have, as we're entering that winter season, there's an email that goes out and there's, phone numbers for everyone, all the compilers. I assume that National Audubon probably has something like that on their website. But yeah, I mean, I would just send an email to the compiler and just, say you want to partake and tell them how you would like to partake. Tell them maybe what your limitations are or what accommodations you need. If you have a nice yard with a bird feeder and you think you're in there in the circle area, just say, this is where I'm at. This is what I'd like to do. This is what I can do, and how do I get involved? And I think, you know, um, if you do so in like a, kind and curious and open and diplomatic way, I don't see them not responding to
Right.
it. And if not, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's any other recourse that people can take in terms of contacting National Audubon Society or maybe reaching out to us here at Birdability to maybe help to,
Yeah, for sure.
advocate or assist in that communication. But, in my experience in the birding community, I've never met a mean birder. I mean, maybe I'm just lucky, but for the most part, folks are very kind. If anything, they're just not totally aware that there are disabled people in their area who are looking to participate.
Mhm. A couple things that you just named really raise next points, I think. You
Mm.
were talking about the feeder. I do want to talk about pathways to participation because I know when I first started thinking about participating in a local CBC, I had no idea that feeder watching was even a possibility. That isn't something that always gets uplifted, right, in the messaging that's going out. I think sometimes attitudinal and informational barriers do exist for folks. And so that's also part of what this partnership is about, is trying to make sure that birders know there are multiple ways to participate. it could mean a stationary bird event. It could mean car birding. Eric, you mentioned parking lots, and I just have to say, I on Friday I had a rough day, and I took myself car birding. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Mhm.
And I covered a portion of a country road, literally just driving very slowly on a gravel country road. And I counted almost 50 dick thistles over that portion. And it made me realize like something that you were saying, which is just there's so many different ways to participate. And Ben and Hannah, I know that's a part of the work that we're doing too, is trying to get that message out that much like birding, there's no one way or one size fits all. And so encouraging people to participate in the ways that make sense for them, I think is so crucial.
I was just going to throw out too that you don't need to be an expert at birds, at bird identification. If you enjoy watching wild birds, that's really all you need to be able to do this. And if you're really intimidated, just you know, make a friend or find, a partner that you can do this with and learn from.
Hmm.
And I would also add to that, and Cassandra made this point earlier, but it's also true that you don't have to spend all day, right? I mean, sometimes I think that's also the impression of like, because it's a 24-hour technically count, right? Oh,
Hmm.
I've got to go do 8 hours. But no, I mean, maybe it's an hour here, or maybe it's a half an hour when you have time right after another event. You've got a birthday party you've got to take your kid to, drop by, after that. And so those shorter duration things can also be really valuable, to let people know that that is a part of the opportunity as well. And I think Eric's exactly right. Like reaching out to the compiler and saying, do you have, options that accommodate this particular, need? And I would just say from our perspective, like, please don't interpret that as being difficult or being,
Hmm.
forceful, right? Like
Right.
that gives people the information they need to know what needs are, what needs exist, and what we can do to help make those opportunities more available, but also people more aware of them.
Hmm. I really appreciate that.
I was going to add in, last year I actually did a class on bird feeders, and how to make it accessible for you. And then at the very end, I talked about CBC because, like you, Kat, I think a lot of people don't know that you could do CBC when you're doing bird feeders,
Hmm.
And so I did this whole entire class at a winery, and now I've been asked to come back and do it again because I had like 15 there, and they're like, "Ooh, I want to be part of the CBC." So
Hmm.
I think education is key there too as well. That there's ways to do CBC without having to travel long distance too as well.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I so appreciate this whole conversation, friends. This has been such a terrific opportunity to sort of pull back the curtain about what a CBC is, about how it's structured, and about ways that we are all, I think, working towards making it more inclusive and accessible, both in the sort of systemic ways as well as in the very personal ways that each of you is showing up in CBCs. As we close out our time today, I'm wondering if any of you have sort of last thoughts that you want to make sure to get to share about CBCs. I know I'm excited about participating for the first time ever in my community, knowing now that I'm in a circle where I could feeder watch, and where better for me as a person with a disability than right at home where I pay deep attention to birds every single day. So I'm really excited about that. I'm curious to hear from anybody else. Last thoughts that you want to leave folks with.
I actually just want to say that I actually enjoy Christmas bird count, and it's my favorite. I anticipate it every year. In fact, the center where I coordinate my CBC count, they get mad at me because right in June, which is right now, I send an email asking for the date so I can put it on my calendar, because it's so rewarding. So as someone who has a meningioma, which is a benign brain tumor, I find bird watching very helpful in my healing process. And so
Mm-hmm.
Christmas bird count is just one of those extra special ones that you could just sit there and just in a different like winter season rather than in the summer or fall or spring and get a different perspective of birds in the area than you would in the May or migratory season. So it's kind of nice.
I love that. Thank you, Cassandra.
I was just going to add a little bit of encouragement to anyone who, might identify as having a disability and wants to get involved with a CBC and is a little nervous. And, maybe you're the first one in your CBC's circle's history who's like really trying to make this access happen. But you doing so is going to make it easier for other people who are coming up after you. And so, yeah, just, I mean, I really encourage you to get out there because not only are you going to create a wonderful experience for yourself, but for probably several other people going down the line. So, yeah, get out there.
So appreciate that. Birding, as Birdability says, is for every body and every mind. And that is true when we're talking about the science aspect of it as well, and that important sort of community science that CBC offers. How amazing to think about 127 years of data and the ways that that data just keeps expanding to help us do better. Ben and Hannah, thank you so much for your work. Thank you for being here. Any last thoughts from you all?
I was just going to add to that just to say that, just like with anything, this is a work in progress. We are working to, become a better CBC, and that involves both our data and improving that data as we talked about, but also the community that we're a part of and the tradition. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of that work. It is ongoing. It will continue to be ongoing, but it's the partnership and the journey in that I think really makes the difference. And so I appreciate your investment in this process as well. So thanks for having us.
Thanks to everybody who participated. Thanks for all the chat messages. Thank you, Eric and Cassandra, for all the work that you do in your own communities to uplift accessible birding. And we will see you all hopefully on another Birdability virtual event, friends. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, all.
Bye bye.